So today we want to talk about one of the things that permeates the life of an elder, a mature elder, and that is the ability to bless. And I want to think about that in your own life, think about that for us in the church. That's what we're going to be talking about today. The question, and you know, really every week for 6 weeks, this is what Phil and I are asking. What is the mark of deep spiritual maturity? And what would manifest in our lives deep spiritual maturity? If we get to live this long, then, I mean, I hate to say it, but we should show a little spiritual maturity, don't you think? I mean, we should. And what do you think is the mark of deep spiritual maturity? I've got a couple of ideas, but do you have any ideas? Yeah. Patience, one of the fruits of the Spirit. So it may be the fruits of the Spirit, right? Would be a good mark. Patience, kindness, gentleness, self-control. I mean, it's hard when an 80-year-old doesn't have those things, right? We would think we should have those by now. So the fruits of the Spirit might be one of those. Galatians 5. What else?
I was going to add, one of my favorite books is Thomas More's Care of the Soul.
Ah, it's a good one.
So I'm probably not the best at doing this, but carving out time to care for your soul.
That is my sermon today. So yes, that's exactly what I'm preaching on.
I love it. Oh my God, that's so cool.
Usually people say one of the marks of deep spiritual maturity is the ability to love and to love expansively. And that, you know, 1 Corinthians 13 kind of love. Love is, you know, also, you know, patient, kind, doesn't hold people in bitterness, you know, that kind of thing. Whoops.
That's hard.
That is very hard. And finally, Jesus' teaching in the Sermon on the Mount, which is what we are focusing on in this class. If you just read these 3 chapters, friends, it is a high bar. It is a very high bar. But we're going to continue to do that, right, Phil? We're going to hold up that high bar for spiritual maturity. This is one of my favorite quotes that I'm pretty sure is Nowen, but I didn't write it down who said it. But I like the quote so much, I'm going to give it to you anyway. The mark of a deeply mature man or woman, the mark of a very mature disciple of Jesus, and the mark of someone truly giving his or her life away is this. He or she is a person who blesses others and blesses the world, just as God does and just as Jesus did. My favorite painting, Palm Sunday, by a Mexican-American artist, which I think is a beautiful picture of the world being blessed by Jesus. But this is, I think, really important. And it's important to think about. I didn't really start thinking about this as early as I should have. But how is it that we bless others and bless the world? And as followers of Jesus Christ and the elders in our family, in our neighborhood, in our community, this is more our task than going and doing and producing, right? And it's hard to make that switch from being the producer to the blesser. I asked this once in a class, and someone talked about the end of his career. He'd had a very successful career. But as the career came to an end, younger people were coming up in the company behind him, some even becoming his peers, some eventually becoming his supervisor. And he began to realize, my job isn't to lead this team right now. My job is to bless those who are doing the leading. And I feel the same way about leadership in the church. There was a time when I was in charge of everything, you know, and I liked it. I liked it. I mean, who doesn't? That's not my role, and hasn't been my role for the last 8 years here. My role is be a good pastor. That's always important. Be a good Christian. Yes, I know that. But in a bigger sense, it's to be a blessing to the people who work here who are younger, who maybe don't have as much resilience or strength, so that they can do their work. And you guys have done that. I know some of you teachers have done that to younger teachers. I know, I'm seeing heads nod, some of my retired teachers. I know many of you have done it in business. And we all are called to do it with friends and family all the time. But I rarely go to a family gathering and think first, how am I going to bless people? I'm so busy, putting food on the table or, doing other things. But it's worth thinking about. Let's see what what wisdom we have from the Sermon on the Mount. We're going to start with the beatitudes. When Jesus saw the crowds, he went up the mountain, and after he sat down, his disciples came to him, and he began to speak, and he taught them. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. This was kind of radical, but what do you see in common about those three blessings? The poor in spirit, those who mourn, those who are meek. What do you see in common about those three types of people?
They're probably not leaders.
They don't seem like leaders, do they? They don't seem like the movers and shakers. They don't seem like the get up and go.
Important. They seem needy.
Maybe not important, maybe needy. Maybe needy. All of them have need. But more than that, the kingdom of heaven belongs to them. They're going to inherit the earth. There's something about this humility, and that's what I'm going to say, humility. Something about this humility that is important and is blessed. And it takes humility to be a blessing to others, right? And let's look at that a little longer. A little further along, don't store up for yourselves treasures on earth, for where moths and rust consume, where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasure in heaven, where neither moths nor rust consume, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. We usually end here, but look what comes next. The eye is the lamp of the body. If the eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light in you is darkness, how great is the darkness? When I read the Sermon on the Mount with people, they get to this passage and they're like, huh? What's that all about? But it goes along with knowing where your treasure is. And I want you to pay attention. Light is going to come up again and again in the Sermon on the Mount. Those who are poor in spirit, those who are meek, they may be humble, but they have an important role to play. They inherit the kingdom. They inherit the earth. And it has to do with where the light is. And the light for these folks comes from their ability, from their lowly position, to be able to bless. Let me see if I can show you a little more of that. You're the salt of the earth. If the salt is lost, how can saltiness be restored? It's not good for anything. You are the light of the world. A city built on a hill can't be hid. Don't put a light, you don't light a lamp and put it under a bushel. You put it on a lampstand. Let your light shine before others so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. Let your light shine. I think when I was younger, I thought that meant I was going to go and do great things. Right? I'm going to let my light shine. I'm going to write a book. I'm going to, lead a bunch of people. I'm going to start a new church. I'm going to let my light shine. Now that I know the Sermon on the Mount a little better, I don't think that's what Jesus is talking about. That light is God's light, and it comes from a place of humility and lowliness. And so I believe this light has to do with the way we bless the people around us. And it's really not us. It's God's light shining through us that blesses other people. In Philippians, you read about this too. This beautiful poem about how Jesus humbled himself for our sake. And then it ends with the Apostle Paul saying, so I want you to be like that, to humble yourself like Jesus and then shine like stars, which I just love. Shine like stars in the world. I think that as we age, the gift of age is having time to rearrange our thinking about how we shine, what our purpose is, and how we can bless the people around us and bless others in this world. If I had time, I would do a little Bible study and tell you that there are plenty of places in Scripture where people are blessed. Just a couple of examples would be the creation story where God blesses the whole creation saying it is good when it's done. Jesus' baptism, of course, you know, when the Spirit speaks and says, this is my Son with whom I am well pleased, a blessing. Jesus' teachings, which we've gone through, and then Jesus' actions. And remember, as Jesus is doing blessing, what does he say? He says, the first among us will be last. The last will be first. I came not to be served, but to serve. And so even in the great miracles and the great ways that Jesus is able to bless people, he's doing it from a place of humility. I think this is important because when I talk with older people, especially newly retired people, they often feel like their purpose has somehow been snatched from them. Their identity has been snatched from them. It is humbling when you've been in charge of a lot of things and all of a sudden you wake up on a Monday morning and no one's going to miss you, right? No one's going to miss you. And to me, looking at these biblical examples of it isn't really about our status. It's about the way we allow God's light to shine through us. And if you get out of the way all those things you were supposed to do and all those people you had to lead and all the work you had to do, you have even more time to spend shining the light of Christ. I'm running out of time, but... take as much as you want. Okay. These are just a couple of my favorite authors talking about blessing. Dietrich Bonhoeffer said a blessing is a visible, perceptible, effective proximity of God. That when one person blesses another, God is there. It's just like, you want to see God? Watch someone get blessed. And God is there. Blessing just means to speak well or good of someone. Dallas Willard, another wonderful author, said, blessing is the projection of good into the life of another. That is a great, it doesn't mean you're laying hands on someone and saying, oh, my dear child, how wonderful you are. But if you're projecting good into the life of another, that literally helps people bloom. And you've seen it. You've all seen it. You've seen someone bloom when good is being projected into their life. It isn't just words, right? It's actually putting forth of your will for good for another person. Not long ago, a young person was in a real pickle, was wanting to follow an ordination track, and they had come to a kind of a real obstacle. It was very hard for them, very humiliating for them. It was a difficult time. I couldn't do anything to help them, really. I knew it would work out, but you can't just say to someone in the middle of a difficult situation, oh, don't worry, honey, it's going to all work out, because, they'll never talk to you again, right? And I didn't think about what I was doing, but I would simply meet with this young person every 6 days, every 7 days, sometimes every 3 days. And I said very little. So now what? So what's happening? So what do you need? And what I realized after about 2 months of this, because the obstacle's been overcome, the decision's been made, the path is straightened out, going full steam ahead, what I realized is all this young person needed was a little time and someone to project a little good, a little positivity, not, oh, the sky is falling and you'll never make this. And it never occurred to me how little we sometimes say and still bless someone. It's worth thinking about for sure. Bob Goff, who I love to read him, he says, don't tell people what they are, tell them who they are. And that's really don't tell people what they want, tell them who they are. And that's really what happened with this young person. I didn't talk about what they wanted. I just kept reminding them who they are and who I knew them to be and the gifts I knew them to have. And I didn't even know I was doing what Bob Goff said. That was pretty cool. Yeah. Okay. This is what I mean. These are blessing baskets that were done by the deacons a long, long time ago, but I just think they're pretty, so I put them there. Here are some characteristics of a blessing. To bless someone, you have to see them. That takes some time. That takes some intention. You have to really see them. Not just what they're telling you, not just what you think, but really see them for who they are. You have to speak well of them and their situation. You don't lie, but you speak well. And I'm always amazed at how many good things there usually are to say than bad things, if you put your mind to it. You speak well of someone, as long as it's true. And then, if you really want to bless someone, what about giving away some of your own life so that someone else can have more life? Does that sound like really deep?
Sounds like the kidney transplant.
It's not a kidney transplant. Let me give you an example. Let's say you love to teach. Let's say you love nothing better than teaching. You love being in front of a group of people. Maybe it's a group of kids, maybe it's a group of adults in a Bible study, but it is your jam. It is your jam. And it's your class. And there is a person who has real gifts in teaching, who is coming up the ranks, maybe even in your class. There is no greater blessing than to give away something that means a lot to you so that someone else can have a boost. And people do it in the workplace all the time, and the people who do that in the workplace are really revered by their subordinates. They really are. And if I don't know anything about corporate leadership, but I'm sure there are books written on corporate leadership about blessing. They don't call it blessing, but there got to be, right, Andy? About empowering, okay, empowering, mentoring, all that good stuff. But what we don't, the point I'm trying to make is it sometimes gives away part of who you are to empower another. I told the story before about, I've got these precious daughter-in-laws, and they are, what a gift. My two sons they did good. They did good. But I like doing family meals all by myself. I like to do the cooking. I like to drive myself crazy. I like to set the table. I like to do, and I do. It is part of my life. It's part of who I am. And what I have learned is I have to give it away. These are very capable young women. They like setting tables. They like cooking. They like setting a menu. And guess what? They should. So it's not killing me, okay? It's really not killing me. But these are the kind of things I'm talking about. And if you think about your life, there are places where you could be called to do the same thing, to give away part of something you love for the sake of blessing someone else. Something to think about. And finally, blessings are more powerful from people who are older and have more authority to those who are not. Women blessing women is actually quite powerful, and men blessing men. It does not mean that it can't happen the other way, but it can be very powerful. When I was a young minister, there weren't very many women pastors older than me. I mean, I think one or two in all of Texas. And when they came to my ordination and blessed me just with their presence, it meant a lot, because there were a ton of men, lots of men pastors, but that really mattered. And then when someone is really wounded, a blessing is important. And when the blessing points to wholeness or delight, it can be much more powerful. And then the question people always ask me is, yeah, but the people I want to bless, they don't want my blessing. They don't seem to care. People always ask me, well, how do you bless your kids or bless your young colleagues when they think they know it all? They don't want my blessing. And my answer to that is you probably are not giving a blessing as much as you're giving advice, if that's the case. They're not the same. They're not the same. It isn't easy to bless someone who doesn't seem to want it, but that's the task anyway. And big-hearted maturity will do it anyway. And it may not be words. It may be by actions. It may be by just graciousness. It may be by absenting yourself sometimes just to let them shine. So don't ever confuse what someone wants on the surface level with what they really need on the deepest level. And mostly, if we believe that it's the light of Christ that is shining, doing this blessing, we don't really have to worry too much about doing it right or wrong if we let the Spirit lead us. So I just want to urge those of us in this age group, we have more time. We have more wisdom. We have, hopefully, more spiritual maturity. This is our calling.
Could you please talk about what poor in spirit means in the translation?
I think, are you doing that, Phil?
Yes.
He's doing that.
But you can see.
Blessing him. And I'm blessing him. I'm blessing Phil.
In my sincere humility, you're welcome to explain it. I will start out by saying that one person who has allowed their light to shine here in our church for the past 8 years is Stacy. And we're talking. It's very fitting that she's talking about blessings. You've been a huge blessing to our church. It's hard to say how much. And there's the humility. So yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about gratefulness. It's sort of the flip side of what Stacy was talking about being a blessing. And this is about being grateful for the many blessings we have already received or we do receive. And so I'm going to focus on that and a little bit. And then, again, I hope to have a significant amount of time to talk. And by the way, if Stacy slips out, that's because she's blessing us again, preaching, teaching, and blessing or preaching again. So feel free. So blessing, blessed are the poor in spirit, and blessed are the meek. Those are the two I'm kind of keying off of this morning, and Stacy talked about them a little bit too. And it's interesting because I'm going to talk about gratefulness, but there's really nothing specific you could see in the Beatitudes about gratefulness per se. There's a lot of talk about gratefulness in the rest of the Bible, but if you kind of read through, like what Stacy was saying about what kind of arises when you talk about the poor in spirit and the meek, it's a sense of humility, a sense of something greater than us, God, and it brings a what arises in us is some sense of love and willingness then to share that love. And it's a state of mind that it kind of presents. It's just describing some of the attributes of what is a loving person who is able to bless and to receive God's love and to follow Christ. And so it all kind of ties together. And so I'm going to start out with blessed are the poor in spirit. So for theirs is the kingdom of God. And I looked up the Greek. I did not go to seminary. However, Bible Hub has a real nice thing you can get on there, and it tells me the Greek, and I don't have to go to seminary. So it says, blessed are the poor in spirit. Bible Hub says, the poor in spirit conveys a heart attitude of inward gentleness that manifests as humble strength under God's love and will and dependence on divine sovereignty. That's the way I read the Greek.
It's good.
So it denotes, absolute dependence on God, and which is
Poverty is nothing but God.
nothing but God. Right, exactly. And then blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. And I've been waiting all day to say this, but meekness is not weakness. I just love that. So I like that. And it's the Greek, again, according to Bible Hub, it conveys a heart attitude of inward gentleness that manifests as humble strength in God's love and leadership. So, and it's it's interesting. I can't figure. I was trying to figure out why this works. What does this gratefulness do that changes us? And we have. I don't know. A lot of people probably use the ACT acronym for a prayer form. Adoration, contrition, thanksgiving, and supplication. I actually use my own version of it because I like to put blessings up front so I don't have to spend too much time on contrition. but it's a lot more pleasant. So that's I use that, and I've used it for a while, and it's and I also look at this site called Grateful Living site, and it's really nice. If I forget about how many blessings I have, I look at that site, and it reminds me, and it's nice because it's so easy to take things for granted and just assume everything is gonna, that's the way things are supposed to be. But it's really gratefulness that opens things up. I'll give you just a couple of examples. One, Stephanie and I have been a couple for 53 years, and I still remember, the random random opportunity that we had to meet, and of course Stephanie fell in love with me right away. It was actually the flip side. But I chased hard. But anyway, we've been married for 53 years, and or not married. We've been together. We've been married almost 50, and but it's when you're together with somebody for a long period of time, it's so easy to take them for granted, or just not realize what a blessing you have. So I included that in my list of blessings, and somehow, I don't know exactly how, because Stephanie's our love has been like steady, rock solid, deep forever, but somehow it got deeper because it's like I kind of knew her better or something. And I don't know, it's really quite nice. And the other example has, this past week, a friend of mine and I accompanied another friend as he traveled back up to Colorado, and it was like, you know, three grumpy old men, you know, on a road trip. But it was, it was quite lovely because we drove up. We went through the Palo Duro Canyon, you know, outside of Amarillo, and then we kept on going up into the San Juan Mountains, and you know, there was snow melt and there was babbling creeks, and we would just stop and sit and listen and watch for, you know, 10, 15 minutes, just in awe of the beautiful splendor of God's creation with the mountains and the snow and the creek and just lovely. And you think, God, this is we are really deeply blessed by the beauty of God's creation. And so if you think about it, you know, if you actually start thinking about how grateful you are, it does enhances things to me. I got to go back, skipping around here.
I just wanted to say,
Sure.
Phil, it sounds like you kind of had you brought me a little bit to tears.
Oh.
A holy moment there. You know, where you just had time, it filled all of your senses, is what I heard you say.
Yeah.
And that really touched me,
Yeah.
because in the busyness of life,
Yeah.
sometimes we don't always hold steady, to use your word.
Oh, well, yeah, I think you have to be very deliberate about it. And I think gratefulness is one of the key disciplines, if you will, that we can use always, but certainly now in our current state of life. And because we have been so blessed, all of us, and so it's a good thing. And the other one is surrender. We're going to talk about surrender later on. That's not quite as fun, but it's but you know, there's one of the books that Stacy and I have used is this book by this woman named Ira Byock called The Four Things That Matter. And she says that the four things that matter when you're a senior or when you're, what's the word we're using? We're elders. When we're elders. I like that better. I feel better. But the four things to say is forgive me, I forgive you, thank you, and I love you. And so she picks up on that too. Thank you. Thank you. Master Ikard, one of the people I really like to read, a 14th century theologian, says if you pray, if you say thank you, thank you, thank you, that's all the prayer you need. And that suffices. So we do have 15 minutes. That's all I really want to hear what people have to say about gratefulness. And so I'm wondering if somebody can give me an example of how you like to express gratitude, or how you have expressed gratitude, or how you've been blessed, or how you've blessed others. I'll give you a good 10 seconds for someone. Yes.
I like to follow up in writing. And there are times in my life I've written somebody and said, you know, you were down and were telling me how bad you felt the other day. Mm-hmm. And I want to get back to you on that, and let me tell you all the good things I see about you. And she died like 15 years later, and her daughter found that letter and gave it to me. Sweet.
So she kept it all that time.
I'd like to follow things up sometimes, not every time, but in writing, after you've had a little more time to think about it, and come back with some things that maybe will be uplifting.
That's nice. That's real nice. What a blessing.
Yes.
So she received a blessing, and you gave a nice blessing. That's sweet. Yeah, that's good to write it down. The writing it's so meaningful, particularly if it's longhand, you know. as opposed to text or something. Yeah. Any your thoughts? Yes, Charlene?
I know Stacy had to leave, but what really struck me in her part of today's talk was how your eyes have so much to do with how you can bless others, or how, I think it's how you see the world. And if you have in your head this perspective that God has this, you can walk into a horrible meeting and still see good, or a town that needs work and you see the opportunity. But it always, if your eye is focused on what is God doing here, you get the next thought is how can I help? And I don't know how you can bless others without that. So I never really thought about those provisions about your eyesight, but that's the tunnel for getting God's blessing out into wherever you are.
Yeah, and I remember, I think it was Gary Dennis said once that he was talking about, if you're walking on a beach, you're not going to find what you're looking for unless you're looking for it or something like that. You just can't walk around, if you, and you're not going to find anything until you look for it, So that's the same kind of idea. You got to be open to it and looking for it, and yeah, and you can do that with people too. You can. I like to try. When I'm in a good place, I even if someone is irritating me or whatever, I try and look for the good in them. Stephanie does a little better job than that, particularly if I'm
She's got a lot of practice.
Oh God, I gotta recover. That was really good. Yeah, I know who said it too. Okay. Yes.
There's real power in telling people that you love them. And in my world, a friend of mine from California, like 10 years ago, said, "Hey, love you, man." And to me, that at the time, it was kind of a strange thing because I had never really used the word in that context.
Right.
Of a friend on the other end of a phone telling me he loved me. But it really struck me, and since then it's become more common in my vocabulary with other friends, and I think it's been impactful. I think it changes the relationship.
Yeah, it absolutely does. That's nice. That's nice. So, have you tried to do that yourself?
Well, it's become more natural. At first, it felt awkward. Like, hey, am I really going to tell this 60-some-year-old guy I love him?
Yeah,
right. But it works.
Yeah, that's good. That's really, yeah, I like that. I had some associates do that sometimes, and it was really nice. And yeah, it's nice.
I have a friend who does that pretty routinely.
Yeah.
And you just get all these good vibes, and you have a really positive view of that person, and you appreciate them.
Yeah, that's nice. These are all good examples. Yes.
I was just going to add, I think also, voicing up is what I call it, when you may not be in the majority, blessing others. I like advocacy, I'll just give you a brief example. We live in Old South Boston, about 2 miles from downtown, and we have a big green belt behind our home. The neighborhood is called the Skyway. There's about 55 homes. And about 10 years ago, juvenile delinquents on the railroad track threw rocks into our house.
Into your house?
Into our home. I mean, you can Google my name with rock throwing. And I spent 4 years, and this isn't about me, because there was a pass-through from the neighborhood behind on the other side, and they would congregate on the tracks with the Union Pacific Railroad. Every time I heard something, I would call the fun fact 911 railroad number, and I'm a copious documentarian. And guess what? I involved council and the Union Pacific, and they were in my home, and the police came, because when you have a rock thrown in your home at 11 o'clock at night, you feel a little targeted. over time.
Sure.
And my daughter was 1.5, and almost got hit by one that they threw into our backyard. After 4 years, I'll never forget this moment. We all have moments like this. A man named Bucky with the Union Pacific Railroad, little short man, silver hair, sparkling blue eyes. And he said with his finger pointed at me, "You're the reason why the Union Pacific Railroad is installing 1,500 square feet of fencing to the tune of $100,000.
Oh, wow.
And I'm one person. And do you know what? I'm getting chills because I haven't recanted that a lot. But guess what? It stopped. The pass-through is no more. And then they did it on the side of the railroad, you know, where the train goes. And I guess maybe in some way that did bless others.
Oh, yeah, well, it sounds like,
Because I
sure.
was one person and I stood up, and Councilman Renteria helped me, and the police and the Union Pacific Government Affairs, and wow, when you look at that, that was a long time. I didn't really think about that, and I'm not being like, but it takes one person to affect change. Maybe that's how we can also bless others, by standing firm on a conviction.
Well, I think so, yeah.
That's my story.
No, it's a good story. Man, just what a blessing it's been for your neighborhood.
Yes, it
Yeah,
has.
yeah.
And I feel safe, and the green belt has grown up, and I'd like a happy ending 10 years later.
It's real nice.
Let me share.
You bet, yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, Jeff?
Letting your light shine.
Yeah.
I was in Portland, Oregon, airport, going to a fast food restaurant, and I started visiting with a lady ahead of me. As she got up to order, I noticed how gracious she was at asking how they were, and very intentional. And then she did that as they were giving her her food. And as I went to pay for mine, it turned out she paid for mine ahead.
Oh, wow.
I was just so, you know, it's been a couple weeks now, and I'm still thinking about how gracious she was and how she
Nice.
let her light shine.
That is nice. That's really sweet. Yeah. Yeah, you know, if you think about it, when you start thinking about all the blessings you've received, you know, they start to mount up, you know. It's,
Phil?
yes,
So,
Nick?
I was thinking in my experience, there's this twilight zone before you fall asleep and when you wake up, okay? And at that point, your brain hasn't kicked in to tell you how bad you got it and all the problems you've got, et cetera, right? So when I wake up, I'll just think about what I'm grateful for, and it floods in. I mean, it starts with life. Life is such eternal life has been granted to us, right?
Yes.
Well, okay, that's better than anything you could imagine, right? But at that time, there's so many things that come in. It could be just as simple as your state of health, your eyesight, your gift of all these senses that we've been given. And it sets a tone for the day, right?
Yeah, absolutely does. It does, yeah. Yeah, and that's a gift that lots of gifts, big gifts, big blessings.
Talking about poor in spirit, I like your research on the definition of being humble.
Yeah.
And it just reminds me of these interviews you see sometimes with the quarterback of some winning team
Yeah.
interview.
Yeah.
And he says, whether it's high school, college, or, well, I just give all the thanks to the Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I just love it when they say
Yeah.
that, because they have such a huge audience. And
yeah, they do, yeah. And a lot of it, most of the time, is pretty sincere, I think. Yeah, it's nice. It's nice to hear. Yeah. Yeah, that's a a blessing that is transmitted to a lot of people.
I apologize for backtracking a little bit, but
Oh,
I remember when you began to talk about blessed are the poor in spirit.
Mhm.
The first thing that popped into my mind is, how do we define the poor in spirit? Is this a negative thing or a positive thing? I think of the poor in spirit as someone who's down, you know, who's lacking, who doesn't have much spirit. I'd like to know what somebody else thinks about that.
I agree. That's the way I always look at it.
Say it again, what? That someone is down?
The poor in spirit as being someone who's down, who's very sad. And so I don't really get the blessing that goes with it. And now I know, thank you for reminding me.
Yeah. Janice?
So just another way to look at
Yeah.
a poor in spirit.
Yeah.
For me, I think of ego as being
Right.
full of spirit.
Yeah.
And if you can learn to let go of that part of yourself, and you will experience the humble connection with the Holy Spirit.
True. That's good. I think so. You know, remind me though, something that David had said, I think it was David some time ago, but it was a long time ago, was that, you know, there's a ton of books. You can go to Barnes & Noble, library, or whatever, and there's a ton of books on the art of leadership and how to be a good leader and everything. But you don't find too many books on how to follow. It's you know, it's really, you know, it's really kind of interesting, right? And that's really what we're supposed to be doing, right? Yeah, David.
I've fought the urge to make that comment.
Yeah, please.
Thank you, Phil.
We'll say some more about it.
Well, the gift of following, you know, you can't be a leader without people following you. And the
Right.
discernment required to identify leadership that we attach to
Right.
is a real responsibility. And the society's total veneration of leadership over spiritually based followership, let's put it that way. It's not
Yeah.
a demeaning of your own ability to make a difference in the world.
Right.
But if everybody's a leader, you know, we don't have.
That's right.
And so it's a denial of reality to not see ourselves as called to be followers. It's just the way it is.
Right.
And that's a big responsibility and, you know, in a sense, a spiritual calling, just as leadership is.
I agree. I think that's right, and that's, you know, that's what Stacy was saying, that, you know, when she came here, you know, she was the senior pastor in Richardson, I think it was, and then she came down here to be the associate pastor, and so she took on a new role of basically supporting Emily, and so it's, yeah. That's what she was, servant leadership, you know, and we do hear about servant leadership, but not that as much, but yeah. Yeah, Janice.
But I just have to think, I have to say that being a follower of that which is the values that we as Christians would hold is also a form of leadership. And when I have
Yeah.
trained people, I've often said, well, guess what? We're all leaders. There's no one that's not a leader. You just have to grow your awareness about the impact of how you are and what you're doing or not doing on your leadership role in our community.
And I think that's true even in spades now as a elder, because, you know, we're really not, well, most of us, you know, really aren't in positions of leadership anymore, really. You're not working, a lot of people aren't working or whatever. And, yeah, so but yet we still have a role to play. And it's maybe spreading God's word it was just sort of a leadership way, but you're following Christ, you know. So we have it's a unique time for us to do exactly that, I think, yeah. So that's what we're trying to get at. Thank you all.